So, who's ready for a romantic anime review? Here's another tidbit about me, please act like you care. Despite what my Hummingbird account says, my favorite genre is romance, which is the reason I ended up checking out this anime. Now, even though I love romance, and there are definitely several great anime romances out there, but I am a little weary of stuff that lend themselves out as romantic anime comedies. More so just for past reasons, let's say. But ultimately, as for My Little Monster, it definitely ended up being above the cut. And I ended up being rather pleased with this one. The plot summary is basically just being around a hardworking student, Shizuku, ended up delivering a note to Haru, who keeps skipping school because everyone is afraid of him beating them up due to past events. And after the two meet up and spend some time together, Haru ends up agreeing to going back to school, and then after these events they end up meeting other people and grow closer and so on, etc. The first thing that really grabs me about this anime was the main character himself. And to be honest, he's probably the best thing in this whole anime. Haru is just overflowing with character and personality traits. He is a free spirit, he's energetic, he's kind, he's lighthearted, he's blunt, he's curious, and man, the list just goes on and on with this guy. And all of these traits are shown in a logical way without them being shoved down your throat. He really just has so many good interactions to show his traits, whether that is just adopting a chicken as a pet, or just acting out whenever is on his mind. Such as when he dumped a drink on Shizuku in the first episode, or the many times when he gets in fights. I could just watch scene after scene after scene of whatever as long as it's involving Haru. Because whatever he's doing, you're definitely bound to get something good and interesting out of it. They really just use his character to help every part of the show, whether that is the romance, the character developments, or the comedy. The next part that really works out well with his character is that they give him faults while at the same time keeping him likable. Giving faults to a character is another way you can make them feel more real. For example, he can't solve his problems very well and can get easily angered and kind of childish at times. But he has the other positive traits I listed before, being very kind, lighthearted, and always trying to do the right thing, even if he doesn't know how to properly do this. Every time he did something bad, there was always reasons to understand and still sympathize with him. Next, and most importantly, these traits, both positive and negative, are justified by his past. First hinted out at the beginning and then later expanded upon. At first, they give just enough to justify his actions. Then later, they progressively show more and more of his character in a way that flows perfectly and fits with the tone of the scenes. And as for his past, it is very sympathetic, interesting, and is all given at an excellent pace, so that we don't feel like it's shoehorned in, but rather creating well-paced interest in his character. Basically, Haru is a really well-written and interesting character. They just do so many things correctly and just make him so likable and interesting, which really helps the show considering he's one of the main characters. Every time Haru was in a scene, they used him to effectively create good investment in the anime, whether that's development, comedy, characters, etc. But thankfully he isn't the only good character, because this anime has several others. The second really good character is Haru's love interest, Shizuku. And like Haru, she definitely has character traits. One thing I noticed was just how different Haru and Shizuku are, despite being love interests. But that's not really a bad thing, because they get a lot of good interactions and development because of this. Just to emphasize the difference, Shizuku is calm, sharp, focused on studies, and likes being alone, which is pretty much the exact opposite of Haru. Also, like Haru, she has faults, such as being cold and a bit distancing at times, which again makes her feel realistic with an actual trait and an actual personality. And again, she has well justifiable reasons to act the way she does, which is really important because it makes all the scenes where she does act mean not result in me hating her. Along with this, there are scenes where she apologizes for her actions and even stands up for others. In short, I liked her character for the same reasons I liked Haru, being she felt real with real positives and real faults, all going along with it. She goes through a complete range of emotions. All these things make her a really good character. Overall, the plot was really interesting with well justified development and interactions. Along with Haru and Shizuku's differences they had, I also liked that they both had positive traits that the other one needs to develop into. Haru needs to learn to be more like Shizuku in ways such as being able to function in society like a normal human being, along with being able to better handle his problems rather than just punching them in the face. and Shizuku needs to be more like Haru in ways such as being nice and more caring to the people around her. And thankfully they do effectively use this concept to develop the characters in basic development sense and in a love interest sense. After meeting each other, Shizuku opens up more to other people around her, and Haru begins to learn to restrict himself a bit more of his problems with other people, rather than just resorting to violence. Now they don't do a 180 all at once, and honestly that's a good thing. It is much more interesting and realistic to have them slowly weaken these faults, even if that means that they slip back into them every now and then. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they're complete opposites. They both have similar traits along with their differences. They are both loners who don't really have a lot of people they are close with, which, contributed with their past, can really help draw in a genuine and believable romance. And along with their interactions in the first time they ended up meeting, this brings believability as to why they would actually want to have a romance. Which, speaking of that, as for the romance elements, they were really well done. The main thing I really liked about them is that they felt really real, which is important because there's a lot of romances that don't feel like this. But here it is really what you'd expect from these characters, who really don't know how to be a couple, but they still like each other even if Shizuku doesn't want to always admit this. And then over time they would develop more feelings, etc. and so on. It was really easy to get invested in the slowly developing romance, since it wasn't one of those, I've never seen you before, but the script, my heart, says I love you kind of thing. Furthermore, there was a lot of meaningful scenes they had together, which left a good impact and emphasized the potential romantic development. These scenes were so good because they had an overflowing amount of emotion mixed with actual purpose. Another really unique thing about this romance is that it was presented in a way that wasn't absolutely perfect, which really lends itself to being unpredictable and interesting. Now, I'm definitely not saying that all this romance was exploring problems in the romance, but more so that the faults of the romance made it a bit more interesting and is used for developing the characters more. Yeah, the romance wasn't perfect, but that's what made it interesting. Moving on, while the main characters were definitely good, I'm glad to say this anime had some great side characters to go along with them, and they weren't just a bunch of token archetypes. Similarly to the main characters, they also had personality, interest, and development. Probably the best of the side characters would be Natsumi, who has some great amount of development with the main characters, which being going from being antisocial to hanging out with people more in real life. Another good side character is Yoshida. While he acts like a nice and normal guy, Haru and another character gets really freaked out whenever they see him, which really helps to create a great sense of mystery and interest to him, since we would want to know why this is. While the rest of the characters weren't as good as the main protagonists, the side characters were a good breath of fresh air, and did what they had to do done well, and were effectively enjoyable to watch the whole way through. With the overall principle being is that they felt like normal, real people. They never had the sense like they were trying to shoehorn a two-dimensional stereotype right down our throats. Now, even with all the positives I really do love about this anime, it does have some problems, unfortunately. While I did like a lot of the parts and ideas of the romance, it never really felt like it was developing out of the beginning stages. Now, I definitely get that they were trying to show a Rocky-ish romance, but there's a difference from a Rocky romance and one that isn't really being expanded upon. There's only so many times where the protagonists say they're going to go on a date, until the whole thing starts to drag on and on and on, and I start to lose investment a little. But to be fair, the anime was being productive with its time, such as developing characters and exploring backstories and so on. So they did have purpose within the episode, so I guess I can't be too hard on this lack of development. But more so that the romance had a really good start and really great moments. But it felt obviously incomplete, and to be honest, that really is the truth. Since being this next point is really my only major problem I had with this anime, being that it doesn't have a conclusion. The ending of episode 13 was more like the ending of a season or an arc, not the ending of an anime, with questions left unanswered and an overall uncompleted plotline. We never really get to know how the romance with Haru and Shizuku ends up. We don't really know why Haru is so freaked out with his brother, which is really a shame because this anime was doing a lot of great things. But I really can't hide the fact that I only felt like I was reading a book halfway through. And since I am pretty positive at this point that this anime unfortunately isn't going to be getting a second season, this is kind of a major problem with it, and something to keep in mind if you do plan on watching this. But even with these problems, overall My Little Monster was a good anime. All of the characters from the main characters to the side characters were all unique and interesting, overflowing with personality, interest, and realistic development, which as long as you have that, it's hard to go wrong overall. which really makes the episodes you do see to be well worth and interesting. And as for the romance, what they did do properly was actually meaningful and rememberable, even with the unfortunate fact this story is really glaringly unfinished. But I still think that the positives, mainly being the wonderful cast of characters, were overall great justifications for my enjoyment of this anime. Alright, end slate time, here we go, the fun games, the joy, the tragedy. I gotta stop making this sound more important than it actually is. Anyway, blah 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 blah, there's the Twitter, there's the Hummingbird, there's more reviews, such as being the reviews of Kitalia Axis Powers and the Akame ga Kill review. Wonderful reviews, hopefully. I think so, most of it.
Shizuku wa kawaii na.
I love you.
なんだありゃ。